Great.
I'll hand it to, Commissioner Amy.
Okay. Yeah, we're just doing introductions.
Oh, am I introducing myself?
Yes.
Sorry. I must not have had my sound connected. Amy Millen, I'm one of the commissioners, and I'm also chair of the logistics committee. Happy 2025.
Yes.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay. Michelle G, if you'd like to go next.
Hi, I'm Michelle Gabertz, faculty member at Loyola, member of the public. Honored to have been able to work in a public role but in partnership with the committee, with the commission. So, and I'm sorry I'm late. I think I was using the wrong Zoom link. So,
You're
No
fine.
worries. I was having technical issues getting on, so yeah, it's just there's something in the air. Counselor Franklin, would you like to go next?
So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Stephanie Franklin. I'm president and CEO of the Franklin Law Group. We do a number of things at our firm, but I am a reparation or reparatory justice advocate for U.S. descendants of chattel slavery. I've been a member of this reconciliation subcommittee for a few months now, several months now, and I'm very happy to be here and glad to have you all here. Welcome.
My name is Eric Ashby Bay. I found out about the commission because one of my relatives was lynched in Frederick, and I've just been following the proceedings ever since. So just a concerned citizen for our affairs, and also I've run a nonprofit mentoring program in Annapolis and Howard, Anne Arundel County for uh, elementary school children.
Great, thank you. And Chris, how'd you like to go next? We're just doing introductions right now. Chris, can you hear us?
I can, so I had to put in my
Okay, yeah, sorry about that. Okay,
Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay, so yeah, we're just, as I said, just doing some preliminary introductions.
Great.
Okay.
And very glad to see that you're recording. I was like, oh my God, I want to be
Yes,
recording.
no, I almost forgot.
Okay.
But I at least made sure to get it off this time.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Yes, no problem. So yes, if you could just introduce yourself a little bit.
Oh, that's what we're doing. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You weren't just saying that for information.
No,
I'm Chris
no.
Haley, Chris Haley, Director of Research, Education, Outreach, and the Legacy of Slavery Program at the Maryland State Archives, and also Commissioner.
Yes, and de facto chair of the research committee.
Yeah, de facto chair. And I think we're going to cancel that meeting. I was just talking to David Armenta today, so who was a former chair, and I think we're canceling it for Monday.
Okay.
Just have to make that official.
Great. Okay, so I will turn it over to Janice and Leah to introduce themselves and welcome to the commission.
Thank you. Leah, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I'll go first. Hi, good afternoon, good morning. I'm not sure of the time difference. I think it's good afternoon for all of us.
Yeah,
and happy New Year. Okay. And happy New Year. My name is Leah Danville. I'm one of the principals of 3 Points of View or 3PV Consulting. We are a mother-daughter management consulting firm. We're DC natives, but I've done a lot of work and a lot of connections with Maryland. We're just honored. I'm honored. We're honored to be here with you all and to be chosen to do this important work. So I'll pop it over to my mom, who you may hear me refer to as mom occasionally. I was not raised calling her Janice, but my partner as well, Dr. Janice Elview.
So thank you. And to repeat what Leah said, we are deeply honored to be selected to help with this work and to work with you and the research committee and all of the other committees that are part of the commission. I'm a former faculty member at George Mason University in the Graduate School of Education, and my research interest was always history education. Published several books in that area. And so this was absolutely something of deep interest to me personally, and to us as a consulting practice, because this is exactly the kind of work that we love to do, to uplift history, to tell the truth, to help be a part of healing processes, to help grow our common knowledge and all of this stuff. So yeah, I'll stop there.
Okay. Well, great. Thank you again. And again, it was just fun going through sort of that, you know, interviewing process and say, yeah, we're very excited to have you on board. Um, and so with that, there's, you know, and I know you've had access to the materials that, you know, we've generated, the research committee has generated, that we in the reconciliation committee have put together. And so I just kind of want to walk through some of this and kind of start talking about, you know, the shape of things and sort of, you know, preliminary sort of start roughing out sort of timelines and things like that because yeah, we have 11 months, which is gonna be sneaking up on us really quickly. So I guess, you know, the first thing, and I'm sure you've probably seen the I'm just gonna share my screen real quick. Um, I'll start with if I can find it. Yes, the um, reparations matrix. That why is that so small there? But okay, there we go. Um, so you've seen that, you know, and again, sort of our rationale, sort of the overarching structure that we've been talking about is sort of part one, the introduction, the the why and the how of the commission, you know, sort of why are we doing this? How have we gone about doing that, sort of preparing that. Part two, you know, truth, that's the 38, you know, case studies. And again, we're hoping to get updated case studies for each of the 38 known cases of racial terror lynching that happened in the state of Maryland from 1854 to 1933. And then part three would be reconciliation based on the materials in part two, um, developing a set of recommendations for reparations stemming from that history that comes out of part two. And so, again, looking at reparations, what we have so far, and there's a lot, and you know, I'm going to ask other folks to talk about and walk through the other parts that they've put together here so far. You know, this is just sort of based on conversations that we've had over several months, sort of looking at, you know, different categories of reparations. You know, we have the symbolic, material, you know, things dealing specifically with and for African Americans, and then more broad policy recommendations. And so I've also tried to make sure that we have a rationale for each of these, so that will hopefully make it easier for you to, when you get to writing up this part, you know, to say, here's what we're recommending and this is why. I think, you know, Commissioner Coles has also put together, all right, I'm going to stop sharing and see if I can switch over to the list of witnesses that you've put together. Um, let's see if I can, hold on, I've got to switch it over here if I can get to, all right, let's stop sharing. There you go. I'll figure this out at some point. So no, we don't need that. And switch over. So I will bring this up and share. And Commissioner Coles, you can walk us through
Sure.
list of
Okay.
things that you have put together.
Okay, so just as background for everyone, we've been working with some awesome interns. This past summer, we had two interns from University of Baltimore School of Law, and one of the projects that I asked them to help us out with was just to help us identify who are the thought leaders and the experts in the space of reparations and restorative justice. And so they did a lot of research into secondary sources to identify people, scholars that have written books and articles and different types of materials that teach on the subject. And that's in a separate spreadsheet that we can share with you guys as well. But after they kind of put that list together of who these uh, intellectual scholars are, from that list, I asked them to then pull out who they thought we might want to ask to invite to speak at our hearing. And so that's where this list comes from. If there are other people that you think are left off the list, then please let us know. It has always been an open invitation to add additional names to the list. But recently, I kind of went through the list with a close eye, looking at the individuals that they identified, and I went onto the webpage of each one of these people just to see how close of a nexus it is between their background and what we want to focus our hearing on. Nick, do you want to give folks the update? I don't think we've had a meeting since we landed on a date and location. Do you want to give them that quick update before I keep going?
Sure, yeah. We are at this point, looking at Saturday, April 5th at the Reginald F. Lewis Museum in Baltimore. And I think, we've got it from 9 to 4:30. And so, yeah, now I know you've started to working on, arranging them into panels so that we can, sort of have them speak to specific topics therein. And
Yes.
yeah.
Exactly. So this is the spreadsheet that our interns put together. I added a column where, and again, these are just my initial thoughts. If someone, has insight into any person, please feel free to share it. Don't feel like because something is written here, it means it's been decided. This is the place for us to have that conversation and that discussion. And I'm completely open to have gotten something, wrong or miss something. So so don't take my word as gospel. But I went through, so we have a couple of different tabs here at the bottom. The first one is we were looking at who are the experts in the topic of reparations. And even that I kind of broke up into smaller groups, and I'll ask Nick in a minute to switch over to a Word document I shared with him as a draft. But I just kind of want you guys to see where I got the names from that I put in the Word document. So one, we have like the group of people that were identified as experts on reparations. Then we have the group of people that are identified as potential experts in media, because that is a industry that we recognize contributed to the environment where lynchings occurred. They often stoked racial tension. They, would name people who were accused of crimes without, them being charged first. They would create an environment where, and oftentimes even celebrate, lynchings after they had occurred by publishing the pictures and maybe withholding evidence that could have led to the perpetrators being held accountable. And so for all of those reasons, we wanted to have a panel that was specifically focused on the role of the media. The Baltimore Sun, a couple of years, I don't remember exactly when the editorial issued, but I think it was a couple of years ago. Hey, just FYI, we can see your emails now, Nick.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I had to email the document you just mentioned back to
Okay. Just
myself
in
because
case
that
there's
was
anything
my
top
chief.
secret in there.
Oh no, no, absolutely not.
We know your
But
social security number now.
well, hey, it's like if you want to steal my identity, there's not a whole heck of a lot there worth stealing. So I will.
So anyways, just going back to talking about the spreadsheet. So that's why we wanted to talk to the media specifically and hold the media to the fire, but also talk to journalists and African American journalists that have always done a good job of showcasing the humanity of the people that were victimized by racial terror mobs. And so, in one case, we want to talk to the people in the media that contributed to this negative environment, and on the other hand, we want to lift up the people that told the stories and told the truth, and hopefully from this panel come up with some proposals of how to bridge that gap and how to get the media that's not doing its job and maybe continuing to perpetuate negative stereotypes about African Americans and continuing to feed an environment where Black people are the victim of hate crimes or police brutality. How do we get them to address their contributions and using the lessons from the African American press? And so that's kind of the idea of the media panel. And then we also wanted to talk to have a panel on law enforcement and the proposals that we want to consider as recommended changes for law enforcement, because they also played an instrumental role in the lynching environment, from often participating themselves as lynchers to failing to arrest lynchers to failing to collect the necessary evidence to hold the lynchers accountable. So all of these different ways law enforcement contribute. And I think a common thread you'll see in what we're discussing is how similar practices can continue to today that continue to contribute to an environment where Black people, we don't use the word lynched as frequently anymore because we don't have the mobs and the old time pictures of lynchings, but many people see parallels in the shootings of unarmed African Americans. Black people are still the largest group to be victims of hate crimes, and so there's still echoes of this culture in our lives today. And so we want to identify proposals for how to address that and rectify that, and what can law enforcement do on its part to ensure they're doing everything that they can to prevent these types of injustices from continuing. So from those spreadsheets, I kind of broke the different people up into different groups. Can you scroll up, Nick, to the beginning? And then another category that I think falls within the reparations conversation, but is slightly distinct, is legal experts. And that is because I think we're all aware that whatever proposal we put forward, whatever legislation the Maryland State Legislature passes, it will likely face legal challenges, because there are, people in our country, in our society, that don't want Black people to ever obtain any sense of justice. And so they are going to be right there with lawsuits challenging any relief that is specifically directed towards reconciling the harm that African Americans have suffered in this country. And so I also think we need to hear from legal experts for how we can protect our proposals to make them the most legally sound and the most immune to challenges. And so given all of that I just said, I identified 5 different panels that we may want to consider having. Again, all of this is open for discussion. The structure of the panels, who's on the panels, all of this, I really welcome you all's feedback. So the first panel that I identified is legal experts. And on that panel, I placed Professor Justin David Hansford, who runs the Civil Rights Clinic at Howard Law and is actually Kayla's professor. So we have a nice in there. Another thing that it doesn't appear on this sheet, but I did try to include it in the spreadsheet. And if you guys have additional information on that, please let me know, is I tried to identify where someone has ties to Maryland, because I think that'll just kind of strengthen the arguments that we're going to be making to our state legislator, that not only are these renowned experts, but they have a vested interest in justice taking place here in their state. And so not everyone is going to be a Maryland resident, but where they are, I think we should just point that out and say that. So Kayla, I don't know if Justin lives in Maryland, DC, or Virginia, but if you happen to know, let me know and I'll add that, because I know he's local. So odds are he lives in Maryland, because that's the best place to be, right? And then I have Sherilyn Eiffel, who's the former head of the NAACP LDF. She's a Baltimore native, and she's also the author of a book called On the Courthouse Lawn, which is about lynching and lynching culture. So I think for those reasons, it would make her an excellent witness if she's able to. And she's also currently a professor at Howard Law. And so maybe Kayla has some ins there as well that she can help us out with. Another potential witness is Damon Hewitt. I know he's a Maryland resident. He's the head of the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights. And I'm associates friends with him, and I've mentioned the work that we're doing. So I don't know if he himself would be available, or if maybe he would be able to send someone from Lawyers Committee. But I think that they would be a good organization to have represented. Derek Johnson, the current head of the NAACP, I don't personally have any connection with him, and I know he's Mississippi based, so I don't know his availability to participate in something like this. But if someone has an in and could touch base with him, let us know. The next person I'm not personally familiar with. I wonder if you might be familiar with her, given the work that she does. Ajwa Ayatoro. She is the chief legal counsel for the National Coalition of Blacks for Reparations in America and author of Formulating Reparations Litigation Through the Eyes of the Movement. And then I have Janai Nelson, who's the current head of NAACP LDF. Should we pause there? Let's pause there and just see if anyone has thoughts or feedback, and then I'll
Sure.
continue going.
You know what? So thank you for sharing this, Commissioner Coles. There are several people on this list that I am very familiar with. I didn't know you were going to structure this the first time I'm seeing it. I want to sit with it a little bit
Sit with it.
because I have
Yeah.
thoughts
Yeah.
about a number, just how you laid it out, and a number of the people on the panel I am familiar with.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. I definitely want to. Honestly, I started digging into this last night, and I really just wanted to have something that we could respond to in the meeting, because I know if we don't have something to respond to, things can drag on, and it's a whole nother month before we meet again. We finally have our date of our hearing, April 5th, which means we need to get these invitations out. And so I just wanted to put something together so that people could be like, I don't like this, I do like this, and then we can start making some decisions.
Now, I appreciate you sharing that and doing that for us. So thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, so the next potential panel are people that are more, I would say, experts in reparations generally, as opposed to just legal experts. And so these are people that have written on reparations a number of times. And so one of those is Professor William Darity, Khalil Gibran Muhammad, William Barber, Joel Edward Goza, and Brian Stevenson. I imagine you guys are familiar probably with several of those names, if not all of them. But I have the books that they've written right there on the document, so they can kind of see why they're on the list. In terms of their Maryland connections, I'm not aware of any of those having a Maryland connection. Okay. And then the next panel potentially is community advocates. This one, I think, pulled a little bit more from your list, Stephanie. I think these are some of the names you added to the spreadsheet. I could be wrong, though. I added Ta-Nehisi Coates there, and he's not really a direct fit there. But I feel like his, writing the case for reparations, him also being a Baltimore, what's the word for that? Baltimorean?
Yeah, Baltimore native.
A Baltimore native. He's got a great reputation behind him. So that's why I kind of put him there, even though the rest of the people I put on this panel are more activists in a way, whereas he is more of a thinker, I would say, in a way. Can you scroll down?
Yes. One moment.
And Stephanie, the people, Yvette, wait, go scroll up for 1 second, Nick.
Mm-hmm.
Just the two people that I have as co-founder of ADOS. Do you work with them?
Yes, I work with their organization.
Okay.
I have connections with them. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I guess definitely give us insight if you think those are the right people.
They are the right people. I
Okay.
put them on the list.
You put them on the list. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So that's where I have them. Okay, you could scroll down, Nick. So the next panel is criminal justice reform. And my thinking on this was I wanted to hear from the people and have the opportunity to speak to the people that establish the standards and practices for police officers in Maryland. And so I found that is the Maryland Police Training and Standards Commission. And so I went through and identified who their leadership is, but also, so all of the first four people are all members of the Maryland Police Training and Standards Commission, but then they also hold important roles on their own outside of being on the commission. And so the first, Colonel Roland Butler, is the superintendent of the Department of State Police. Chief Malik Aziz, he is the president of the Maryland Chief of Police Association, and my understanding based on that title is that it's probably a police union, as well as the next person, Sheriff Jim DeWeese, Maryland Sheriff's Association Police Union, and Clyde Boatwright, Fraternal Order of Police, definitely a police union. And in my experience working on federal cases that tried to bring police accountability and reforms to policing practices, the biggest hurdles that we encountered was dealing with the police union and them not wanting to open their members up to any additional accountability or liability or anything else. So the biggest challenge that we had in achieving reforms and bringing about systemic change was the recalcitrance of the police unions. And so that's why, for me, it was important for them to be here, so that hopefully we can get to a place where they can see, you know, why change is necessary and that they can be on our side. Interestingly enough, not that it matters at all, but interestingly enough, almost all of these individuals are Black. And so it's just a, interesting fact to point out. But that, so we're the officers who killed Freddie Gray. So, you know what I mean? I'm not saying that that is determinative, but I do think it's interesting. So the other people I had on this panel are community advocates that advocate for more constitutional policing and equitable policing. And so there I have there's a coalition called the Maryland Coalition for Justice and Police Accountability. And this Meredith Curtis Goodperson was the contact person for the coalition, and she's also at ACLU. And I noticed that Baltimore Action Legal Team is also a part of this commission, and I put its president on there. And Silver Spring Justice Coalition. These may be names that you added, Stephanie. I got these from the spreadsheet, that's where I placed them. And there was also someone named Dr. Ronaldo Evangelista, who looks to be a professor that focuses on multiculturalism and policing. So that's that panel. And then the last panel was recommendations for people on the news media reform.
Michelle, before you go there, I added one other name to the comment box, just someone to consider. I don't know him personally, but I've read some of his works. Dr.
Okay.
Rashawn Ray, he's at College Park. He's a sociologist, also a Black sociologist, and he's done a lot with policing and criminal justice reform.
Nice.
And he's had some very interesting articles. So just another one to consider.
Okay, that sounds good. I'll try to add him to the spreadsheet. The policing panel, we're kind of, I don't know how we'll get through all of this in one day. And Nick and I and Amy were kind of talking about trying to figure out how to run a show. But that panel to me almost feels like two panels. It feels like kind of two separate conversations, one with the police and one with the advocates. And so I'm not sure if we'll be able to meld them or if they need to be separate. Amy, you've got your hand up?
Yeah, just so you have it in the back of your head, Sheriff DeWeese is on the list for the Carroll County hearing to testify.
Okay.
So we may hear from him. We as a collective may be hearing from him then.
Good.
But I think, his focus might be slightly different since he'll be speaking more towards Carroll County.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm not sure. Maybe he'll still speak from the vantage point. Just a little background, his office is in the old county jail that Towson Cook, who was the man who was lynched, that's where the current office is.
Okay.
So also an interesting juxtaposition of history and present day, etc.
Yeah.
And I feel like we don't need to go into it, but That's it. Sorry, I was about to like open up the whole story, and I was like, wait, this is not the place nor time to open up his story. So I'm gonna just close it back up.
Okay. Yeah, you have your hand up, Stephanie.
Yeah, and again, I know that you just stated that this list is pretty vast for the criminal justice reform, but I did want to recommend another name. So it's Tanya McClary. She is from Fort Washington, has clear ties to Maryland, but has been the what is they call these positions, but like the police accountability officer or for
Mm-hmm.
different major cities. So
Okay.
Dallas. So her position was created when she was in Dallas as a result of that Amber was it Geiger killing
Yeah.
that happened in Dallas. Um, and she's now in Philadelphia. And she's
Okay.
an attorney, and she's a lifelong criminal justice activist and advocate. I think that she could bring a wealth of information to this panel.
Would you mind writing her name in the chat? And
I
then
sure will.
I'll add Rashawn Ray and Tanya, I think you said.
Tanya McClary.
Yeah, and I can add them both to the police tab on the spreadsheet.
I sure will.
Yeah. Um, okay. And
One
another
thing,
thing, oh, I'm sorry.
sorry, I was gonna say I like the geographic representation around the state for this one, especially as we're talking about criminal justice reform. I think that's nice, so we could hear what folks are doing in different parts of the state and see where the points of intersection and divergence is
Yeah.
occurring. I also think that 8 is too many.
Yeah, it's too many.
So I'll just affirm your musings about that one.
Yeah. The other thing I just wanted to kind of put on our radar is that the Attorney General Anthony Brown is also a member of this commission, and in his office assists our commission as well. And so I think we'll just have to like kind of figure out how to navigate that and just lean on them to kind of help us figure out the best way to approach these people. Is your hand still up, Stephanie, or did you just forget to put it down?
I forgot to put it down. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. And then the last panel, news media, I put on there, Nicole Hannah Jones, Clint Smith, who I know has done other, it seems like he's attended other things that our commission, if not our commission, then the Lynching Memorial Project. It seems like he's attended other things that they've put on. So he's aware of what's happening. And Maryland resident. Nicole Hannah Jones is a Howard professor now, so she's local. Then I have the owners of the Baltimore Sun, Dr. Frances Tony Draper, who's the head of African American newspapers. We had a couple of commissioners met with her recently just to make sure she was aware of what the work we were doing, both from the standpoint of, hoping to get more coverage in African American papers of our work, and also highlighting for her this hearing, and that, we would love to have their engagement and involvement. Antonia Hilton as a journalist in Marylander, and Robert Embry as president of the Abel Foundation. And Amy, I don't know if you want to talk more about that last one. I know it was a name you mentioned.
Yeah, just somebody, I was in conversation with somebody not connected directly to the reconciliation, to the commission, who reminded me that the Able Foundation was founded by the family who used to own the Sun. And that they created the foundation maybe in a sense to use today's language of reparations, or to think about giving back to the community after taking so much. That was secondhand. I actually have not gone back into the foundation's website to do that research. But knowing the current I don't know the current owner of the Baltimore Sun, but maybe being familiar with his political stance, it could be, interesting to have somebody from the Able Foundation speak a little bit more historically, as well as what sort of the money is trying to do today, which might be different.
So this list is ambitious. It's long, especially for one day, and it has a number of people who probably have very, busy, challenging schedules. So I don't at all think we're going to get 100% of who we ask, but I do want us to be strategic about who we ask. So, yeah, if people have thoughts now, feel free to share them. Um, but I would say, like, if you need more time to sit on it, if you could get back to us, please, within a week, because we do need to get moving. We have a draft letter ready, and I'll, we need to figure it out. But like, I put in a proposed response date of February 14th, just an early enough date so that we can get all of our ducks in order. We can get our advertising together, our run of show, everything. And so I think we want to give people at least a month probably to respond. So we should get these invitations out sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that, again, and again, maybe we don't need to do this, but I was also just thinking in terms of, should we try to get folks from state's attorney's offices or other folks, from that side of the legal system, you know, into the mix. And if not, that's fine. I mean, I think
Like as
it's,
the prosecutors. I think that's a great, yeah, that's a great, yeah. So maybe we split the criminal justice panel into two and have one side of it kind of focused on the state government folks and then the other side focused on the advocates.
the other thing, and I know, Amy, this is probably going to be the last thing you want to hear, but, if we've got this much and if we have to split it into a, two-parter and do, a second part later,
Yeah.
I know that's way more work for us, but if it means we're going to get the testimonies that we want, I think we should at least consider it.
I thought of that too. I was like, this might need to be 2 days.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, because I feel like one of the things that's missing, and I sent a quick email to Michelle and Nick right before this meeting, that we're missing the public comment section, which has been really, I think, powerful in the last handful of hearings. And we're missing the descendants' voices. That's a conversation. Do we want to provide space? Descendants have been invited to speak at all of the county-based hearings. Do we want that opportunity at a state level hearing? I don't know. The sort of intro and pomp and circumstance, we need to read the House bill, and we need to set, all that framing, which typically takes 20 minutes. And Delegate Pena Melnick, we may want to invite her to speak. And I think not just 2 minutes.
Yeah.
So if we do the House bill reading, et cetera, and the delegate, I mean, that could be 40 minutes combined, for example. And then you mentioning Attorney General Anthony Brown, or Governor Wes Moore, or former Governor Larry Hogan, who's the one who signed the bill. Not really sure. These are just it's part of the pomp and circumstance again.
Yeah.
But it may be important, especially as we work to writing with Leah and Janice, thinking about the report and our recommendations. We want to make sure that we are friends with all the elected officials as we go into that next stage, and that we're asking them to read this amazing report.
Yeah. Just going to one of your comments in terms of descendant testimony, I think that because we have had county hearings in each county and we've invited descendants to testify at each county hearing, I don't think this hearing needs to duplicate what we've done. And so I'm not sure if that needs to be a component of this hearing, but if there was a dissent, and it's hard to ask one person to be representative of so many voices, so many experiences, but I could see asking if we could have a descendant who is representative to be on that community panel, right? As opposed to a separate section of hearing from descendants, because we have their testimony, we have it in writing, and we're going to use it in our report. And so I'm not sure about that. When we were initially talking about this hearing, the criminal justice and news media portions we were thinking they were separate, and maybe they need to stay separate. And if we chopped those two panels off, then then we could really focus on the reparations more piece of this, and then save criminal justice and news media and make that a separate hearing. So that's just kind of my feedback.
No, I think that's a good idea, and it's just a matter of, do we want to work on on a second one? I mean, I just, in light of this, just sort of wrote back to St. John saying, we're going to go with the Lewis Museum. But if we're going to try to do something, I guess maybe in, later in April or
Yeah,
May,
we could do
because I
that.
know thinking, in terms of May, college campuses, that's going to start dealing with commencements and all of those fun things with the end of the semester. So, if we're going to think about doing a second one, we're going to need to think in terms of where, but then also to make sure that, we're giving Janice and Leah enough time. I figure with the history, there's enough there to keep them busy for a while. So, but again, I think, we want to make sure that we finish it so that they've got enough time to sort of go through that and try to incorporate that into, drafts of things. Okay. Again, thank you for this. This is just fantastic, and I think it really speaks to the work that you and the interns and everybody who's been contributing to this. It's kind of it's really starting to take form now. So thank you for that. The other piece that I want to make sure that we talk about is the work that Professor Gavertz and her students have been doing at Loyola. They put together number one, first off, they've gone through and gone over, the transcripts for all of the hearings thus far, to make sure that they're accurate. And so that what we have posted on the commission's website, they've gone through and vetted and, sort of, checked for accuracy. But also in the process of doing that, they've put together a code book to, make sure that, sort of themes and ideas and issues that have been coming out of the hearings, we can, sort of identify them, refer to them, and sort of do it, sort of with ease of reference. And so I'll turn things over to you, Professor Gewertz, if you don't mind, to kind of walk us through some of the work that you and your students have done. And again, I mean, I was just blown away by, the paragraph level references and identifications. So that should make it very easy to get from, hearing transcript to getting that into sort of a recommendation form. So I'll turn that over to you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Commissioner Query. Is there any chance I can share my screen?
You should be able to
Oh,
if
fantastic.
let
Okay,
me just
perfect.
do that. And if you can share your screen, that'd be great.
Wonderful. Okay, so there's a few different things, and I'm debating if I should show you the old version or if we should just focus on the new, and we don't have
Let's
that
go
much.
let's go with the new one,
Go
because
with the
that's
new.
a comprehensive one that I think is going to make everybody's life easy.
Okay, perfect. So I'm posting it here. One thing I realized as I listened to Commissioner Curry, as I listened to you talk with how important it was to have the rationale, I was realizing that I should include another set of codes here, which we were calling the legacies of lynching, which really is both legacies, but it's also contemporary manifestations of white supremacy. So I can bring that into it. So you have that as well. I didn't want it to be too much. But what you'll see is the recommendation codes are currently split into two categories. There are the broad themes, And then there are, I know I'm jumping, then there are more specific institution focused. The specific institution focused are the ones that are much more specific, but both of them I think kind of go together. So you'll see that the way it's broken up is that it has like recommendations of civil society, including churches, and it kind of serves as a category to collect a lot of the different sentiments that came up from descendants, expert witnesses, and I'll show you that report in a moment. But what we have here to the right is the operational definitions. This basically sought to highlight the specific, some of the specific ideas that came up within each. So let me stop sharing this. I know this is a lot, but real fast. You'll see, so like we have the specific institution. I know it's hard to kind of show everything at one time, but okay, let me show this part. So this goes hand in hand with the code book. This is the like the report that we can keep submitting every time we code one of the hearings. And you'll see that it's broken up again into the broad themes and specific themes. And the best way to really go through this is by having the navigation panel open, because then you can just click on accountability, or if you want to go to news media, you can kind of go down or search news media, although that's going to show you everything. You can then click on law enforcement policing, and then it'll take you right down to whatever it is you're looking for. So the comment box is meant to highlight some of what was coming up in the different segments. So we have here practices for journalists to adopt moving forward, including studying publications from organizations such as the Equal Justice Initiative, emphasizing that allegations are just that, going beyond the contents of police reports, talking to all parties. Also includes diversifying reporting on the Black community by having Black reporters report on Black excellence and partnering up with groups such as the EJI. So each and every one of the categories has this, and then quotations that speak to it. And the best way really to navigate that is going to be by using this navigation panel to kind of comb down. Now, one other thing I want to show, just because I think it can be helpful because there's a lot, I also included two different visuals that I think are helpful for getting a larger picture of it. And you'll see here, this first visual is the broad themes. And I tried to group them so you can see a bunch of the ones that are speaking to acknowledgement in terms of like doing truth telling, whether it be because the past informs the present, or truth telling in order to address divides, promote healing, truth telling in terms of wrestling with institutional complicity. And so all the way to here, discussing racism and impacts, honoring the life and legacy and symbolic remembrance. So this kind of includes the big picture in terms of the broad themes. And let me put up the last one, which is specifics. And again, I know this is a lot, but I'm happy to kind of meet afterwards too, to kind of go through some of this more specifically. And this is some of the specifics. So we have in terms of like law enforcement policing, some of the ideas that came through the hearings. All of this comes straight from the hearings. So including studying and acknowledging law enforcement involvement, complicity in racial terror lynchings and the impact on the Black community, studying the history of the Black community and police relations more broadly, taking actions within policing and law enforcement for non-repetition, etc. So these visuals really are meant to help get a sense of the broader picture. I know I kind of raced through that. I don't know if anyone has questions of any of these. I can pull it back up, whether it be that broader report. But indeed, Dr. View and Aaliyah, I'd be more than happy to kind of sit down with you and go through the report. I'm using Atlas TI. I don't know if that's something you've used, but I'm happy to share that with you as well if you think that could be helpful.
Thank you. This is incredible.
Yeah, as I said, when I saw, it's like the timestamps and paragraph markers, sort of to the recordings and the transcript. I was like, okay,
Mhm.
you've
Yeah.
just made everybody's life
Yeah.
so much easier.
Right.
So it'll be easy to, it's like, again, to get the theme, but then you need a quote, boom, there it is. And you can just copy and paste. I mean, yeah, this is just
Mhm.
gonna, I was just so excited when I saw that. So
Right.
thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Excellent.
This does
Really
bring,
excellent.
actually, it brings up a question though that Leah and I had, because we've started the process of, just trying to figure out how we're going to tackle this. And that is how long it takes to do each of the transcripts, given the massive amount and the detailed way in which you're approaching it. We're wondering what the pacing would be of the outstanding transcripts. And we also know that there's some hearings that are upcoming. And so we're trying to figure out our own sort of work pacing aligned with the transcript development. Do you have any thoughts about that? Generally speaking, how long has it taken you to do a single transcript?
Well, so the transcripts, thankfully, the commission has been, I think, sending to someone else, and they did a fantastic job on the Montgomery County one, which I'm currently going through. So a lot of them are in really good shape, and so we are kind of going through those. Um, we, of the ones that have been included in the report, that includes 6 of them. And I think in addition to these, we still have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 if the institution and reconciliation hearings is together, 9 if those become separate. And so we still will need to go through these hearings and send those back. I think one thing I guess I would kind of put out there is if the report, that I kind of walked you through with that navigation panel, if that's helpful, excellent. Use it. If it's not, and you think it's more helpful to just go through the transcripts, that's okay as well. I don't know if that's exactly your question. The drawback of coding so many different segments is these segments appear multiple times, and that can be a good thing, but it may also take more time, even though it's organized and clear.
And I think in terms of the transcripts themselves, before Michelle receives them, I'm looking at my inbox, and we being the executive committee of the commission is supposed to be approving all the way up to the most recent hearing. So those transcripts are done. They're just waiting for one of us to get our eyes on them and to, catch any spelling errors or anything like that. 'Cause I do see Kent, Caroline, and Queen Anne's sitting in my inbox. Nick, I don't know if you've seen that. That was a December 30th email we received, which is why it's probably still sitting in all of our inboxes. Um, so, I mean, it's a pretty quick turnaround from the transcription folks.
That's good to know. That's helpful. I think we would use that as sort of the baseline for how we would dig into it. But what you have done, Michelle, you and your students have done, are going to make the report take it to another level. And so I think we can start with the initial transcripts, Amy, that you have on hand or will have on hand soon enough. But I think it'll be essential to include the work of the Loyola folks.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And again, I can't thank you and your students enough for the work that you've done on this. 'Cause again, you're not technically part of the commission, but we are so grateful to have you and your support. So, yeah, this has been a lot. I don't know if Janice and Leah, if you have questions, comments, concerns at this point, just given everything that we've thrown at you. But yeah, and again, I want to be mindful of time. So,
Well, so one of my questions was already answered just now in terms of the pacing of the transcript availability and then this deeper dive. When can or should we start populating some of the documents that, I mean, we've seen I guess the template for the case studies, and there's some spaces where things haven't been discovered yet, or the case, whatever. Can we enter?
Is that even for us to fill
Yeah,
in?
yeah.
I don't know, Chris, I don't know if you want to speak to some of that since, you're sort of handling the research side of things at this point.
Well, most all the documents that we've had, I'd say, I want to say regardless, but that's not really, that seems like a negative word. But however they have gotten to us, or whatever has been their origin, we are documenting and we're putting into our archival system, which is to say we're coming up with the way that we're going to catalog everything. So that would be something that if you, I don't feel like we have any problem, we the commission have any problem with you starting to populate it with whatever you want to populate it with, or with whatever materials that you think will begin to give you background information or background narrative that will help you start to fashion your own narrative of our commission from its beginning to where we are today. We can start to provide that, because what we've tried to do, among everything else, is find all the different agendas that we have from the beginning of our formation, which I feel like our first meeting was, I know it was 2019. I don't exactly remember what month it was. Maybe it was
September.
November or something like that.
September.
September, okay. And we can start giving you those. We don't, and whatever minutes we have for those, we can start giving those to you, or which is giving to you, sharing those with you to whichever degree you want to begin to, again, populating them or use them as a source for your narrative. We don't have them available on over the firewall yet. But I think we have them in what's called a T series, which is getting really technical. It just means it hasn't been fully accessioned to the point where we have them linkable, I think, because it could be that we do have them linkable now. But that's what we can do. So I would say, whatever you're looking for, just ask, and then we'll do our best to find them and get the appropriate, I guess PDF would be what you'd like, probably, and send you a PDF of whichever materials you like.
Okay.
My gut is that, I mean, it really depends on what you want to do. I would say one of the early minutes would probably be very beneficial to you. With those meetings, maybe this is just me guessing and throwing it out there. You guys know better than me, but for at least the crux of 2019, just to give you a starting place, because you already have, I would think, you probably already have the bill that formulated the whole thing. You probably could or can talk to Nick, and he can give you background from his own perspective about meeting with Will Swartz and Delegate Pena Melnick, and sort of that on the ground floor about how this commission started. Then to start looking on our YouTube site to see some of the first videos of presentations that were given. We did one back in the crazy, was that October? Whatever it was. We did one which is before the hearings, which was, it was David Falconley, Carl Snowden, Nick, our then, what was Deneen the chair of? Was Deneen the chair of?
I don't know that she was a chair, but again, we had her there because she was working for the Washington Post.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's one of our first online representations of the commission. I feel like that would be a very good thing to give you a perspective of. At least right until COVID starts, which of course is very quickly into our existence. And to see how that works for you. And then after looking at all that, you can see, well, this is really most helpful for us at this point to give it a starting point of our narrative. And then, I mean, any of the videos, I would say any of the videos of the hearings, because that's mostly what we have. There's a lot of articles that we have too, but I don't know, like the articles are probably what you would want to write your report on. I don't think that's an outside view of what we're doing, except that, of course, at times it'll have quotes from us from some different commissioners. Yeah.
Okay. No, thank you. And I feel we feel comfortable reaching out to anybody to ask any question, because we're in service to this commission. It's we all know it's a mountain of data, and it's how the
Right.
question is how to make it authentic, accessible, deep, right?
Right.
And then actionable, right? More importantly,
Right.
actionable. And
Mhm.
so those are the mantras we're going to have in our head as we're going
Okay.
through, even though it's really easy to get sucked into the rabbit hole of the
Oh my
details
gosh,
of the
yes.
information, right? So yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
And I also wanted to add that one of the reasons we wanted to have this reconciliation hearing is in the hopes that the experts we invite to testify will also submit written testimony
Mm-hmm.
that supports their oral testimony,
Mm-hmm.
and that's whether they're able to attend or not. So, if
Mm.
someone's unavailable to be there in person, hopefully they will submit something in writing. And even if they do attend in person, they'll still submit something in writing. And that will hopefully be additional information that, will help fill out the report and give it weight.
Mm-hmm. And we assume it'll be recorded as well?
Yes.
Yes, all our hearings are recorded.
Great. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
So there'll be a transcript from that too.
Mm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So other thoughts, ideas, questions, comments, criticisms?
I guess my thought is, what are our concrete next steps and what are our deadlines so that that we can stay on track?
Right.
One question I guess Leah and I would have, I mean, obviously we intend to be at the hearing. What do you think you'll need from us prior to or as a part of the hearing? Because they're different tracks. There's the sort of logistics track and getting the people and blah, 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 which you all are doing. But then there's the content piece, and I don't know the extent to which what we're doing contributes to the content piece or not.
I don't see what you guys are doing as contributing to the content of the reconciliation hearing. I see what you guys is doing is taking everything we've already done from the regional hearings and the background on the commission and getting started with framing up that report. And then when we do the reconciliation hearing, we'll be giving you that second half, the material for the second half of that report is how I see it. I don't know if
Got
my
it.
commissioners differ.
No, that sounds about right.
Okay.
I was just thinking in terms of, again, the 11 months that we have, if we could get, sort of that part two on the case studies, if we could have those, say, by June 1, ideally, that way, we'll have time to kind of go through it, send it back for revisions if necessary, but then that still would give you the better part of the second half of the year to kind of work on part three with the recommendations. And ideally get that, by I'd say September, October, so that this way we've got time to go through it and do the revise and resubmit, and hopefully get everything in by December 1. And I'm pretty sure if we have to go past December 1 later into the month, we probably can, but let's at least kind of, shoot for that, December 1 target date, since that's, I think with the extension that we've got, that's the date that's in the updated legislation.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
After this conversation today, I think I'm leaning towards splitting it into two hearings. So I don't know if anyone else, if where we need to go to make that decision, but I'm kind of thinking we need to split off the law enforcement and media into a separate hearing.
Yeah, I think, we can bring that up with the executive team, and then it's
Okay.
just gonna be a matter of finding it, to picking a date and finding a venue.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
this might be, an opportunity, depending on where we want to go. Do we want to stay in Baltimore? Do we want to take it to Annapolis or
Yeah.
where else? It might be another opportunity. So that, the folks at St. John's, if they were willing to host us, and that might be a good occasion. especially if we can do it after their commencement or something like that. So that way,
Yeah.
we wouldn't have to compete for the space.
I think that would sounds really like that would be a really good option if we could do it there at a time that worked for them. Uh, yeah. And another reason I think that could be advantageous is if we are going to have to subpoena anyone, it would be in that second group, and that
Right.
gives us a little bit more time to figure that out, get those ducks in order.
Mhm.
So, yeah.
Okay. No, this sounds good. And I think, yeah, the executive committee is going to be meeting next Friday, yeah, right before the hearing. But yeah, I think that would be, a good moment to bring that up and to kind of say, hey, and I can start looking at, the calendar on St. John's, see when their commencement is so we can work around that and, touch base with them. Again, presuming, people want to do that as an option. So yeah, I think we've got some good things going here. Just in terms of preliminary rough calendar. But I think the content in terms of what we're putting together here is solid, and I am really excited, and I cannot thank you all enough for all the work that you have put in on this, especially given that we're not getting paid to do this. So yeah, thank you.
I'd have
Okay.
one question just in terms of pushing it back towards after commencement for I think for all you commissioners, there may not be, but I guess I'm thinking in terms of institutional complicity, unless that's speaking more broadly and not focused directly on each particular individual. Okay, I hear you. So the case studies really are each victim themselves. Commissioner Millen, I know you kind of jumped on the yes, it's late, so I will pass it to you because you have a much more grounded understanding than I do.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're just, I don't think we should go into the summer. I think we're gonna lose people. And I think of post commencement as summer. If we do a 2-day hearing or a 1.5-day hearing, I think it should be Friday, April 4th, and then Saturday, April 5th. It's a lot, but I also think executive committee needs to talk about it and figure this out. Yeah, I mean, I think Stephanie said earlier she needed to wrap her head around some of the panels and the thought. I need to wrap my head around the idea of blowing this into 2 days. I understand the rationale. I just need to think about what that
Yeah,
means.
what that's going to look like.
My hair just went even more gray, so I appreciate it. I love this
Yeah.
curveball.
As I said, I knew this is not going to be something you wanted to hear, but I at least threw it out there.
No, yeah,
Yeah.
I think it has to happen, but I just have to think about how. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Chris, your hand is up.
Yes, I'm in my office and I don't have my earphones on. If you can hear other voices because there's somebody else talking outside. But just, I guess for all of us, for those of us who have been there from the beginning of time, it's just to remember we should focus most directly on what do we have to do? What are the mandated meetings and or hearings that we have to do, that we have to complete by the end of this commission's sunset? And then the other ones can come within that framework. And also to remember that as much as we are trying to catch up and get all these things done, that we do not need to feel that if we can't have them done within this time frame, they cannot be done in the future. And so, in other words, that we present what we present, and that others can move forward and do, and we can come and be a part of their hearings and be a part of their presentations, such as the different MMLP, such as Prince George's County, have done so many different presentations on their own, and we can be a part of those. So in other words, I'm trying to say, to try to take the pressure off some of us who, quite frankly, have been doing this since 2019, and to get these hearings done and not think, oh, and here's another one we have to do, and here's another one we have to do. Because I've, from the beginning, that first one that I talked about was one that was not a mandated hearing or presentation. It was more of an idea, let's get out there. Let's let the people know that we're doing something. And I want us to take that into account as being something that we can do to help flesh out our idea, but not to make it a have to, because we already are still dealing with that pressure of have to.
Mhm.
Hope that makes sense.
No, it does. Okay, and just FYI, St. John's College commencement is on Sunday, May 12th. So for what that's worth, yeah, if we're gonna go there, we would need to work around that date, but I'm thinking if we did it after that and ideally before Memorial Day, we should be able to work things out. Okay. But yes, thank you. And yeah, again, trying to be mindful of time. Um, I guess, it's like if we can kind of keep the conversation going via email as necessary, but I know if people need to hop off, I want to, respect that. Um, so anyway, it sounds like, we'll bring stuff to the executive team next week, and we'll reconvene again this time next month and be in touch via email in between. So thank you all.
Thank you.
I am really excited by, the conversations that we've had today, and I'm looking forward to the next round. So have a great weekend, and hopefully
Thank
you're
you all for welcoming us to this process. We appreciate it.
happy to have you here.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank
All
you
right,
all.
take care.
Enjoy the
Bye-bye.
snow for those of you in Maryland.
Oh no, no.